Heroes of Olympus is probably one of the most complained about series from the Riotonverse universe, but there's one thing about it that I think if this was changed, it could have made Heroes of Olympus more, well, better in some areas. And the thing that I think should have been changed is that Percy and Annabeth should not have been part of the Seven. Now, before I want to get into this, I want to remind everyone that I do have a Percy Jackson podcast where I go deeper into this series, chapter by chapter, and basically talk a lot more in detail about these sort of things. So if you're interested in that, the link for that podcast is in the description box down below. But to get back to what I'm talking about today. Now, Percy and Annabeth have always been an integral part of the Riotonverse, and that's kind of the issue. Heroes of Olympus didn't have the time to be its own series because by having Percy and Annabeth there as central characters to the plot, well, they're characters that we know, which gives us less of an opportunity to care about these new characters. Now, I know this sort of contradicts a previous video I did about how Annabeth should have been part of the quest in The Lost Hero, but from that video as well, it did get me thinking more about the Seven as a whole. And so there are three things in particular that I want to talk about with this, and that is who should have been part of the Seven instead, why Percy and Annabeth don't make sense being part of the Seven, and how this may affect and change the story. Now, the first one is obviously the thing that will be brought into question by having Percy and Annabeth not being part of the story. Who would be? And for me, that's kind of obvious because they're already involved in the story in some way. And that is Nico replacing Percy and Raina replacing Annabeth. Now, this does change things a little bit because the way in which this would work and the way in which it kind of makes sense to me is by having Nico and Jason swap places. So things sort of stay a little bit similar, although in the case of The Lost Hero, I do a whole video, I'll card wherever, I think it's this side, about how to change and rework The Lost Hero so it is a little bit better. But the Nico storyline works in this case as well because, I don't know, there's just something about Nico as a character that I feel he deserved to be more of a main character from this point. We've been introduced to him in the Percy Jackson series and now he's grown up more. If anything, this should have taken place a few years later and have Nico be 16 years old, around the same age as most of the other characters in this series, and Percy and Annabeth being grown up and already in college sort of age. So they've retired from more big demigod quests because, come on, they deserve a bit of a break. But Nico as a more main character and being this person who swaps places with Jason, I think it would be an interesting way to kind of show the importance of Nico as a character. We see in The Last Olympian that he is being accepted at camp. He's finding his place there. So I think it'd be interesting for him to be the one who goes missing and seeing how the camp reacts to that. Showing the fact that they are searching for him and they care and they're concerned because he's suddenly just disappeared and he's not done that before other than when he ran away. And then trying to figure out what happened and maybe even having Will be the person who ends up at the Grand Canyon trying to figure out what's going on. Also then further introducing the fact that he and Nico have something there. But having Nico be this character introduces him more as a character, gives him the chance in the second book for what would be Son of Neptune, but I guess Son of Pluto? I don't know, something like that. So also give more of a connection to him and Hazel, him being there and them being able to join together, and us being able to see more of that as well, both in his POV and Hazel's POV. I don't know, just having him being a more integral part of the Seven and to the story as a whole, for us being able to learn more about his abilities and see more of his fighting skill and him actually having connections with people. I think it'd just be more interesting than just having someone that we already know so much about going through more drama once again. I don't know, but it's the same with Raina as well. Raina is probably one of the most interesting characters. So many people love Raina, and I want to see more of her in the story as well. Like, the fact that there is this, and the fact that her story is so interesting, and her godly parent is sort of like the Annabeth equivalent. Obviously, it's not actually Athena connected, but she, like, her mother is a war goddess. But she is a good replacement for Annabeth in this case. They are similar-ish characters. They are ones who are battle and strategy focused. They are the ones who are basically natural-born leaders, but don't always take on the leader role because they realise some things need to be collaborative. I think Raina would have been a great addition to have someone be more of a leader-like role. Sort of like the Nico and Jason situation that we see with Jason and Percy. Them kind of not having a rivalry, but them butting heads a bit more. Obviously, again, because of their godly parents of Hades and Jupiter. But then Raina coming in and taking the lead because, you know, she is the leader of camp. I don't know, the relationship building there would work so much more because they don't have any previously established relationships with anyone in this group. So it's something that can grow. As we know from Heroes of Olympus, the seven are borderline acquaintances. They don't actually become friends. In this case, it makes more sense for them to become friends because there's no pre-established relationships. There's nothing. Obviously, there's going to be the conflict situation, but there's a way to make this better. And to go into why I don't think Percy and Annabeth should be part of this, it is the fact that they are pre-established characters, as I've just been saying. Having them already have a story that we know all about, and the fact that we're connected to them already, it does make it more difficult for us to be interested in these new characters. Because, like I've been saying throughout The Lost Hero, the whole thing of Percy being missing is very prevalent for like the first couple 100 pages. And then it kind of continues and trying to figure out about Jason and all these sort of things. Like, we are more, like, even the blurb on The Lost Hero talks about Percy being missing. The Lost Hero story focuses quite a lot on Percy, and I think that's an issue because we as an audience are then wondering about Percy. And then the case with the Son of Neptune story as well, that is very Percy focused. I think if Nico was involved with that story instead, yes, it would be Nico focused, but we don't know that much about Nico in terms of the series thus far. So having him be that main character, we can learn more about Frank and Hazel, because Frank and Hazel are devastatingly underutilized in this series. So by having them have this opportunity of being on the same level as Nico in terms of importance, I think it would help us connect with them more. Same with the Leo, Jason and Piper situation. By not having Percy and Annabeth be part of the Seven, we can actually get to know the Seven without having these pre-thoughts of, oh yes, we know all these things about these two characters, we don't really know anything about these guys. And that's a problem. If you can't connect to these new characters because you know too much about others, then it kind of falls apart in some areas. Also add into the fact that by having Nico and Raina, there's not going to be relationships everywhere, because Nico is not in a relationship, Raina's not in a relationship, so Leo's issue of being like, oh my god, I'm the only single person, will disappear because he can get over that inferiority complex in some cases, or hopefully that'll work out in some area. But by having them there, it's just going to improve the character relationships more than anything by removing Annabeth and Percy. And third and finally, how this will change. And honestly, it's just basically what I've been saying. The relationships of the Seven are going to be so much better by not having pre-established big characters. And I know obviously Nico is technically a pre-established character, but we know next to nothing about him that it kind of doesn't matter that we know his name and know little pieces about him, because it doesn't kind of make much of a difference. Whereas Annabeth and Percy, we've seen their entire story, we know everything about them, which causes an issues with these idea of building character relationships. And I think by having basically a completely new cast of characters in Heroes of Olympus, it's gonna make it easier for the readers to kind of not forget about the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, but put it more into the back of their mind instead of it being in the forefront by having Percy be part of the cast and Annabeth being part of the cast. Editing Fran. So, okay, technically one thing that I missed here is that One thing that will change is that the storylines that are focused around Percy and Annabeth are obviously going to be different. But people can be, like, Nico and Raina can be implemented into those. Like, we know Nico's already gone to Tartarus, so just have that actually happen in the story. Have House of Hades be about him and Raina. Sort of like what happens in Blood of Olympus, but then that. So things will need to change. But, you know, there's a way to do it. Like, the fact that Percy and Annabeth have become integral to a storyline when we're meant to be learning about these other characters as well is an issue. So changing things around by having maybe Nico and Raina be the one going to Tartarus, or maybe even Frank and Hazel going to Tartarus. Imagine Frank and Hazel going to Tartarus. That would be devastating. And then the similar situation of what happens in Blood of Olympus, maybe, or just there's a way to do it that makes these characters fit together better than having Percy and Annabeth involved in the story. By removing them, Heroes of Olympus gets to be its own thing. And I think that's important, because Heroes of Olympus doesn't feel like its own thing. It feels like it's overshadowed by Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Emily, just in general, I think Rick Riordan needed to plan the series better, but by allowing the chance for Heroes of Olympus to be its own story, I think that could have improved it so much more. But what do you guys think? Do you think it would be better if Percy and Annabeth weren't part of the Seven and maybe Raina and Nico took over instead? Whatever the case, let me know in the comment section down below. And yeah, what other videos about Heroes of Olympus do you think I should do? Is there anything about Heroes of Olympus that you really didn't like that you would like explored? Also let me know in the comment section down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching this video. I truly do appreciate it. In the description box down below you'll find the links to my Percy Jackson podcast, my social media, my merchandise store and my Patreon, where if you want to support me, that is the place to do so. Can't support me on Patreon? Well, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and drop a thumbs up and share with your friends, because the algorithm is a bitch. But yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.